Winning Plays is back, and the Boston Celtics are going to the NBA Finals.
Just as we predicted.
Just as we nailed back in January. This is Brian Robb, joined by Chris Forsberg of NBC Sports Boston. And yeah, I don't want to toot our own here, but we really we nailed this from a fact that we went through two things, Chris. We went through the blow it up method in January and the push all the chips to the middle in January. We wanted this team to pick a direction back then. And they did that. They picked the direction.
Yeah, I'd like to take some credit for that. At least we weren't. I keep saying, you had to pick your side of the street, and you were either picking, all right, if you're gonna suck, at least suck a lot, and if you're not gonna suck, then do something. And a lot of people were on the opposite side. And they were like, well, just break up the Jays because that something has to be changed. And luckily, I never went down that alleyway because that's a tough place to be now that Jason and Jalen are raising the Larry Bird and Bob Cousy trophies after beating the Miami Heat.
All right. We have a lot to talk about this week. Luckily, there'll be plenty of time to do that with this series that will for the.
What do we do? What do we do with all this time off? Right.
2 days off in between games, which may feel long for you guys at home, but for people who have to travel during the series, it's a much welcome development. But let's look at game 7 deserves a few minutes here off the top. Do you want to start with the beginning or the end of the game? I'll let you where do you want to go with this?
Well, let's start with the juicy stuff. Let's start with the end.
Has Marcus Smart written a thank you note to Jimmy Butler yet? That's I guess my first question.
Can you imagine our Felger and Maz just like throwing chairs right now because they could have had a week worth of episodes based on Marcus's decision. I can't even justify it. It was just it was so bad.
Well, you just gotta be happy for. I'm happy for him from the sense like he played so well up to that point in the second half, and then it literally was the movie of like what's gone wrong for this team in big spots for the last 5 years coming together, and then miraculously it didn't.
So what I love about it is you think about it. You hear Tatum after the game talking about how that January 6th loss in Madison Square Garden was the low point of the season. It felt an awful lot like that, where the wheels are coming off. And everything they can do to not get out of their own way is what they were doing. And Marcus takes that three. I don't want to sound like I'm justifying. I know what he was doing. He was like, if I hit this, it's over, and it's a clean look and all that. But the situation was just, oh my God, how can you be doing this right now? And so, yeah, I mean, it'd be a lot. It's funny how like little things like that, like another foot on Jimmy Butler's 3-pointer, and where the whole tenor and conversation isn't, let's take a victory lap for this core. It's, oh my God, Marcus Smart messed up in the biggest situation of the year. And so that's just the way it goes. But at least now for the Celtics, it's breaking their way, and they're doing enough to put themselves in position to win a game. But I will say this, there is, it's probably not the biggest storyline here, but they're gonna have to be better.
Yes.
Moving forward, they have to be better. They can't have these lapses. You're not going to get away with that against the Warriors. And so, sure, I hope they learn their lesson. But ultimately, I revert back to this with the playoffs. Doesn't have to be pretty. It just matters if you get wins. And the Boston Celtics are on to the finals. And so Marcus Smart will be absolved of all transgressions, and we'll just focus on the good parts of that half that he had.
Yeah, it was. I'll say the Celtics this for the team in the last they're Smart made the free throws, which is
something.
Credit for that. I mean, it's something again in right,
Jalen.
And a lot of Smart's misses in the last 3 minutes were justified, like you said, open looks at the time, and Tatum, the right path, the right plays were trying to be made, and he made a lot of those shots over the course of the night. It was the fact that it was 5 in a row for him, which was oh. And that was when you're oh my God, is this happening? This is happening. And then on that last play where Jimmy Butler pulled up for 3, the Celtics got their ass back on that play, which I think a big part of it was Tatum was back. It was a frantic play. Smart missed a layup in traffic, but everyone, a lot of times in this series, they did not get their ass back in that situation. But Tatum was all over Strus. Jaylen Brown was back. Horford obviously played it the right way. and said, okay, Jimmy, you want that? Like, that's probably the least of the options we want to give you right now, but you can take that because we'll go with the numbers there. And they got the rebound, and that's that. Like you said, it doesn't matter how it happens. They've had a lot of crazy things happen to them that go in against them these last few years, and the pendulum is finally swinging the other direction. But yeah, it did feel like, just like you said, like that game in New York, or just the first half of the season in general. Like that was literally every single game was like what we saw at the end of Game 7 there.
Like I said, I was having terrible flashbacks, but it's just weird to sit here and say, like, everything we're talking about is juxtaposed to the fact that the start of the season was so bad, and here they are in the NBA Finals. But yeah, just did you? I kind of like the shot in the moment. Like I'm for me, if I'm Eric Spoelstra, like, while I understand the value of the drive, and maybe you can get Horford's on his heels, and the other night he hit a big and one over Horford in that situation, but I mean, Jimmy Butler was rolling. Miami had all the momentum. I don't mind going for the kill shot at that spot. And, he didn't get it. And Celtics fans can celebrate that. But, yeah, I just, like, I'm still down here in Miami. And my buddy Nick, our buddy Nick Friedel was talking to the guy behind the counter here at the hotel. And a lot of people down here are lamenting the shot and whether he should have drove.
Yeah, I mean, you got to, if you're a Miami fan, just from a standpoint. I'm with you in terms of, like, yeah, he had it. Butler was on fire again. Like, you can't really argue with anything he chooses in that situation. The fact that he had Horford on him, and like with an open court situation with that much time left, I mean, think, oh, like, yeah, if you're a Miami fan, you're going to be like, oh, like, that's like worst case scenario, we get 2 free throws there.
Who is the Miami Felger? I need to find out.
Right, exactly.
On the radio,
who's going to be that today? That. Yeah, I don't know who that person is, but they're gonna have a field day for the next week or two. But and also just from the Celtics, they talked about after the game, just a sigh of relief, being like, oh man, are they really doing this? But like that, if that game goes another 2 minutes, 3 minutes, like, do the Celtics lose by 10? Like, I don't know. Like, that's the push and pull and of making a decision like that. But when you're Jimmy Butler, you played 48 minutes there. Like, what do you have left in the tank?
Exactly. I don't think, and that's part of the reason I think he stopped. Like, he didn't trust himself going at the basket at that point based on his legs, and everybody was gassed at that point. So I just don't like get too hung up on it. Celtics shouldn't have put themselves in that position.
Yes,
they should have been a little bit more crisp and moving the ball. And they were, I mean, man, there was like 5 different points of that game where I'm like, did they just forget everything that works and run and push and all that? But ultimately, again, I just can't get hung up on it because it did not ultimately bite them, despite their desperate attempts to let it bite them.
And going back just to the game itself, bigger picture, some really interesting game decisions between. I mean, obviously Tatum and Brown went close to distance. We know that the beginning of the fourth quarter did not go well for your guy. He was gutting it out, Rob Williams, but it was just, again, you could tell that in that spot it was almost unfair to him to put him back in that game, because it was like, okay, what? You're not right. Like, what do you expect to happen?
All right. So, like, I have to go immediately on the defensive about Rob here. But I think one of the criticisms of Rob has been, hey, how come you're not out there? And I think in this night, he at least tried to give it a go. And it was clear from the first 2 possessions, he was not himself. And yet they needed him to grind out whatever he ended up. What he played 12 minutes, maybe?
Yeah, 12. 15.
Yeah, oh, wow. Okay. So, like, they needed him to grind out 6 minutes at the start of each half. And just, like, give Al a little support, set that defensive tone, and limit the amount of minutes that you had to lean on Grant Williams, whose foul rate is steadily creeping back to 2020 levels. So, yeah, like I can't like fault him for trying to be out there. I actually was surprised when he started the second half. I thought they'd go back to the start Grant, bring in Robb for a couple minutes, but maybe they just knew that while he's loose, while he's stretched out, maybe get your 6 minutes there. But yeah, I'm worried, like, moving forward, like, how's he doing? Marcus seemed better than Game 6, so like I'm encouraged there. I don't think we have to worry too much about his health, and everybody else should just need a couple days. But certainly Rob's got to be better. I thought the interesting part of the series overall was Pritchard has some good moments and then just kind of completely disappears. Seemed really worried about them hunting him, and I mean they were hunting Derek White when he was out there, so you can understand, like, you got to be careful with with Pritchard, but I thought there were spots where Pritchard could have given you energy and ball handling and all that, and went away from. So, what do you think the playoff rotation looks like? Are they going 7 the whole time? Are they going to like float in some Neesmith? I mean, some Pritchard. Oh man, they floated Neesmith. But will they need to use that many guys, or do you just, with the spacing of the games, lean on your 7? And when we say 7, we mean essentially like Robb's limited, so you're just leaning on Grant and Derek White off the bench.
Yeah, I give Payton Pritchard a shot in this series more, and I think it'll help him from a matchup standpoint a little bit in terms of like the Warriors have less guys. I feel like obviously you have Curry and Thompson who can expose you on the perimeter, but there are fewer just other guys that can create on their own, and that Warriors lineup. I mean, it's a great offense, obviously, and it's like terrific ball movement, but you at least can. There's probably a little bit more margin for error there at times with Pritchard, and I think offensively, and we saw in these last 2 games, like it was an incredibly short leash, and I get it. That's like Ime wanted to lean fully into the defense, which ultimately proved to be like. I mean, to be honest, it was crazy. Like Smart played the entire second half. Like Derek White barely saw the floor in the second half, and that was a decision.
I thought Ime was going full starters the whole half,
right?
Except like the Williams switch off. But then Derek White came back for the first 3 minutes where they tried to go without Jaylen Brown in that instance, just to give him a breather. But yeah, I thought the same thing. I said, oh my God, Ime's going super tight here. He's just going to lean on all these guys. And I don't know how that would have looked at the finish line if Jaylen didn't have at least enough energy to kind of will them to the finish line there.
Yeah, that would have been there'd been so much to talk about. I mean, there's already so much to talk about, but if they had somehow fallen there, that would have been a lot of things to be looking at closely. But at the same point, like he clearly made a decision. Okay, like this is like Smart has it going tonight. Like I'm riding or dying with him. And for most of the second half, that worked great. Like rebounding, making good decisions inside the arc. It all worked, and Derek White had 3 turnovers in 19 minutes. So that might have been a situation where Ime saw that and was like, we need to. That's literally what we need to get away from this game, and we need to play. Whoever's going to help us play the cleanest game, like, is what we need to go to right now. So it worked. It's there, but as far as rotation goes, I think you see Pritchard a bit more at least the beginning of the series to see what he has in these games, and then I'll be curious to see like what Robb can. This is where Robb not being right really hurts you, in terms of like how much can you get away with him playing on 70 or 80%, given what the Warriors can do from a 3-point line against you. Like you're not going to get away with. It's not PJ Tucker out there just taking threes only when he's wide open. It's some of the best triggermen in NBA history.
I'm fascinated to see how it plays out. I don't want to get too far ahead. I feel like we need to get through Game 7 before we start. I want to ask about matchups and like how we think the series is going to go. But any other like grand takeaways from Game 7? Like I thought Ime bounced back really nicely. Like he did press the right buttons in terms of routing Smart. I mean, obviously you can quibble with the finish line, but I thought they played way harder at the start. That was the biggest thing. Yeah, right. And I think that starts with Ime. I mean, you could see Will Hardy too. Like, let's move. Like, gotta get the tempo up because they were so stagnant in that last game. So I thought the coaching was really good. We'd done a segment on one of our programs about who we would vote for the Larry Bird Trophy. And originally, like after Game 5, I was leaning towards Al because I thought he was super impactful defensively and doing all the kind of Al things. And I felt like, you could tell it means something to him. So he was setting that sort of like, we're going to do this tone. Then he had a miserable Game 6. And I was like, okay, probably not going to get that trophy. I think if Ime had been eligible, I would have thought about it, in terms of like, because I thought he had a really good series. I was worried about that matchup. Spo's been there. He's done it. I'm worried if Ime would be a little bit overmatched in that sequence, even though he was good against Bud. And obviously, Steve Nash wasn't much of a headache. But, credit to Ime for pushing the right buttons more often than not outside of Game 6.
100%. That was, it's a phenomenal run for him. And like you said, the energy, the pace that they came out with was something that this team does. Like if you were going to win a road Game 7, you have to have that start. You cannot play from behind and just have that build up on you. This was a situation where it doesn't feel like they led wire to wire, and it wasn't, and they had the counter punch multiple times when the Heat got to 6 or 5 until that final sprint. So I think that definitely stood out to me in the big way. From also a coaching standpoint too, from the Heat's side, I was shocked that Spo stuck with Oladipo for so many. He took he was a plus 16 in the night, and defensively, obviously helps. But some of his shot selection absolutely killed them in that game. And that was something where I was like, when they go back and look back at that, if they're if you just have someone who is just more aware of the situation or just does not think this is 3 or 4 years ago,
right.
Those are I think that was from a coaching standpoint in terms of Ime rode with the guys there, but Spo had other options there, and I feel picked the wrong one.
I don't disagree, but they were clearly crossed their fingers on Hero, even more so than with Robb. They just threw him out there and said please, and he had nothing.
No.
And I think they're just so desperate for offense that you just can trick yourself into. Well,
give me Caleb Martin over freaking.
Yeah, no, and I'm with you. And even Lowry came back down to earth a little bit. Had some big shots there in that fourth quarter, but I feel bad. I don't feel bad. I feel like, if I'm going into the offseason, Spo's going to walk into Pat Riley and be like, okay, maybe some shooting just beyond Max Strus and Martin, but they just didn't have enough offensive firepower, which is so weird because in the next round it's going to be the complete opposite. The defense won't be as jagged, and I don't think the Celtics are going to turn the ball over 50 times against the Warriors, but they're going to have to be a whole lot crisper on offense and score more crisply because Miami just didn't have those options.
Where does Miami rank in terms of toughest teams in the league? Do you see in terms of if you're putting these in order right now, were they the better the teams in the Bucks?
No,
without Middleton, or no?
No, even without Middleton, I think the Bucks, just because the Giannis factor, it's just so much more difficult to have the game plan for one guy who can shred you. And I still feel like the Bucks had more offensive firepower than the Heat without Middleton. I'm sure that didn't bear itself out very often in that series, but I think in general, I'd take that roster. But I do Miami just makes it physically imposing. It's tough to take the ball inside, and then just when you get comfortable, they're going to go zone on you, and you're going to have to be creative and make sure you're in the right spots. And so defensively, I like what Miami did and at least gave themselves a chance, but they're just so bad offensively. I can't rank them among the best teams, and yet they were one shot away from the NBA Finals. So, shout out to Heat culture for still finding a way to be in the mix.
It was almost fitting though that they at the end of that game did not have an extra timeout, and because Kyle Lowry had to take one early in the falling ground, on a flop in the fourth.
We all said that. We're like, what is he doing?
Yep, and that was certainly came back to bite there in the fourth.
Tell Miami Michael Felger about that too.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, that's for next week. We haven't talked about Tatum at all yet. I feel like he won the MVP.
Should we talk about Tatum, the Larry Bird Trophy winner?
The Larry Bird Trophy winner. I guess it's 26, 10, 6. Steal on the block. The biggest thing about his night to me was, in terms of how much he brought it defensively, rebounding, things like that. That was the offensively, him making the right play, which he did time and time again, does not surprise me at this point. But when you get the full all around, you're hitting the glass, you're not turning the ball. I thought not that they should be praised for this, complaints to the official was not, you couldn't really see it most of the game. Which minimal, which again, in a game like that, matters when you saw Tatum getting a 3 off of inbounds when PJ Tucker was out to lunch at one point in the first half complaining. So yeah, Tatum, he needed a performance like that in Game 7, and they got it.
He did have I want to say 2 instances where he fell, which he is weirdly prone to do, driving to the basket, and didn't get up fast enough and didn't get back down the court and gave up a 3. But otherwise, like you said, I thought from the jump, it was clear he was setting the tone about we're going to play harder. I thought he was active on the glass, just like you said, the defensively. I didn't need him to score 50 in this game, but you do need to bring that energetic tone. And him and Al, from just like, we want this perspective was clear. And so, yeah, he deserves credit for that. And just, again, he's just the sort of dude who goes quietly, look up and, wow, that's a pretty good stat line. What was it, game 5 where he was at 31 points? I was like, he's at 31 points. But, you get to the free throw line and make your life a little easier. I just thought it was the other stuff, the passing. Jaylen Brown had one really nice feed at one point, like a fourth quarter drive where he kicked it out to the corner. And, those are the plays that they shouldn't like sit here and make us tweet about them when they happen. But, the fact that they're happening more frequently now is encouraging, and they need to continue to make those right plays.
Yeah, 22 assists on the night, and you had 12 assists from Tatum and Brown combined.
Wow.
Up against, again, 6 turnovers, which, it still isn't great, but it still is a hell of a lot better than game 6.
11, yeah.
Those are, like that's, and you look at what again, when you're able to lean on your defense, like Celtics did, and those guys can, provide those numbers and still give you everything you want defensively, and, force the Heat to be a team that had 16 assists period, and we're relying solely on 2 guys who made some pretty incredible shots the whole way to keep them in it.
I don't want to slander any of our media brethren, but because we love Timmy B. But how did you feel about Jimmy Butler getting that?
Come on, Tim. He was great these last 2 games. Like, let's not forget 3, 4, and 5. That's all I'm saying. Little recency bias right there. Like, it's if Butler hits that 3 and they go to OT and he gets the 50 and they lose in double OT, then okay, but you lost. Your numbers. I mean, I'll pull up his numbers for the series here. Let's give this a fair.
They weren't bad, but there's 3 quiet games. I mean, if we're gonna lament that Tatum had a quiet game in the mix too,
let's be reasonable here. 25, 7 and 3 for the series for Jimmy Butler. Let's look for Tatum, 25, 8 and 5.
Okay, so yeah, advantage Tatum.
Yeah.
So, although I will say, I was talking to Max afterward, and he had to do by the way, he was awesome on the trophy presentation.
Oh, yes.
Talk about, he owned that stage, and but he was saying, like, in the ramp to it, he didn't know who was getting it, and he was worried too that it was going to be Jimmy Butler. Like, what do you do? Just let Jimmy Butler come invade the Celtics circle and give him the trophy? Like, it would have been weird. So, but yeah, I feel like you had to give it to someone on the Boston side, and Tatum, as we said all along, it's like, it wasn't a hard choice. If Al had a monster game 7 or something, maybe you could talk yourself into that. Maybe if someone else had a game and had a decent playoff series, you'd convince yourself. But we kind of figured it was going to Tatum, and sure enough, he got it.
Final thoughts here on 7 on the series. This is we've talked about pretty much everyone here.
Yeah.
Grant Williams, nice bounce back night in the first half before the fouling came to play. I thought that was big. Derek White again, like everyone, like the energy from the jump that wasn't able to sustain, but like they got something from almost everyone in this game, which I think was important.
I think the big thing I came away with that I in the interminable crawl to the game, as you're just like reading the same stats for the 100th time, literally for the 100th time, because it was the 100th game of the season. Yes. And I kept thinking, because as I wake up in a hotel room every morning, I say to myself, like, how long have I been on the road, and how many? And so, I mean, it's remarkable that every other day for the past 11 games, or last night might have been 12, like 14th game this month. That 3-day break in Milwaukee seems like 2 years ago, and so I'm not going to say I'm exhausted, but like it's been a lot, and I don't have to go play basketball and grind against all these NBA players every night. I can't imagine what these guys are feeling, and certainly you get some juice from a game 7, but to sort of put a wrap on that series, like that's 2 ultra physical series in a row, 2 series where they really had their backs against the wall at multiple occasions and found a way to win. So a lot of positives in terms of their mental toughness, in terms of their resiliency. Crunch time, they kind of faded a little bit. I wouldn't want to look at their net rating in crunch time for that series, but by and large, you found a way, and that's all that matters at this point. As we start to spin it forward, my fear is, how do you bounce back? And even though this is going to feel like a long crawl to the start of the game. Like the Celtics flew home last night. They landed 4 a.m. They're going to sleep all day today. They'll probably get together for film on Tuesday morning, and then it's right in a plane for a 7-hour flight to San Francisco. You got media day on Wednesday, and then, essentially what's an early game out there, 6 o'clock tip, I think, with the 9 o'clock starts. So, like, this is going to come faster than you think. Are you confident the Celtics can just sort of use 3 days to rebound from 2 ultra physical series, and will they be ready for the start against Golden State?
I do. I mean, I think that they're going to be.
That was just email-like confidence.
Yeah, yes. No. I just based on how they've responded to stuff all year, like 3 days off for them after the grind.
It's going to feel like a vacation.
It's going to be, It's like, and then the rest of the series, you're going to have 2 days off in between games. Yeah. Like, they're going to be riding high, and they're the younger team here. And I know the Warriors will have fresh legs, for a week here. But like when you're talking about their stars and stuff like that, like this is when you have Tatum and Brown and where they are. This is what the benefit is.
Sneaky subplot. What if they give Robb game 1 off? Then he gets like a week.
Ooh, I don't hate it at all.
Yeah. Or like even if he just manages minutes, but he's still got to ramp up if he does that. I wonder if there's some value in considering what a week would mean. To because they wouldn't play.
To
that was Sunday. Yeah, 7 days. Like legitimately said Sunday to Sunday if they ramp them down for 1. I don't know. I just kind of thought of that and got my wheels turning because if you feel like 1's going to be tough anyway, and we've seen this in instances where like they rested Smart for game 1 against the Bucks, right? And if you feel like you can either steal it or that it's going to be a grind no matter what, maybe you can buy your guy 3 extra days. I wonder if you give it some consideration.
Yeah, I mean, they need to, just based on how the postseason has gone with him, and what you were able to get out of him last night. Like last night, you really never really have a choice. Like this was like, we need you now. We need you to take 12, 15 minutes. He was a +5 in that game for all his tough spots there. Like he was still,
that's good things.
Had an impact. Exactly. So like if you can, if your mind says, hey, let's get 1 out there and we're better off saving, I'd rather have Robb at 90% for game 2 than 75% for 1 and 2. Like that might be an easy answer, especially if it bodes into the rest of the series. And I don't like the other big thing for me, and it'll be funny to see how it comes into play for this Warrior series, of like the crunch time stuff. To me, it's like if someone would ask me for a prediction before game 7, it was like, okay, if it's close, I don't like the Celtics' chances. If it's not close, then the Celtics take it. And it almost worked perfectly. It was like it was just a big enough lead for them to hold on. And so that's like, if they can, maybe that's like the final frontier for them in this series is to like, cross that bridge and be able to like deliver in these crunch time moments and learn from taking too much time off the clock, or figuring out like, okay, who they letting shoot like in these last 3 minutes here, maybe like becoming more aware of things like that. But they certainly will be battle tested from that front in terms of what they've had to go through in these situations.
I just keep saying it. They have to be more focused. Like even in that Miami series, there was a ton of open 3-pointers that either Strus missed or PJ Tucker missed. You might not get away with that against Golden State. And so you're just going to have to be a little bit more crisp. And that's Ime's challenge. He's pushed every right button. He's got these guys to lock in when they need to, at least for stretches, but you can't have the lapses that have kind of continued to plague them. How do you think they match up? Like, let's say Robb is out there, like, because that would probably be more often than not in this series. How are you matching up starting 5s? Like, who's guarding who for the Celtics? Smart on Steph.
Yeah, you start Smart and Steph. The interesting thing to me is like what you do with Tatum. If you give him like a legit assignment, or you give him a roamer type deal, which you can't fully do in terms of their personnel compared to what the Heat had. But I think like Klay Thompson is obviously, he had a tremendous game 6 there, and it seemed to be like really finding a stride. So he's just as crucial as keeping him under control as Steph is. But when you have that, I think you obviously do you put Robb on Draymond if he plays? Or do you put him on Looney?
I think you put him on Looney, and then Al takes the Draymond assignment.
Yeah.
And probably tell Jalen he has to chase Clay.
And then Tatum just has Wiggins.
Tatum has Wiggins. And I hate the idea of Tatum having to chase Clay around screens and stuff like that. I just feel like you're probably better off letting him have easy. Now, I guess you're going to switch everything, and invariably the matchups are going to change every time trip down the court. But, can you make it a little bit easier in your primary assignment and allow Tatum, who is going to have to be great offensively in this series, to sort of have that breather? Thought about, could you put Robb? Because they love putting Robb on, sort of a perimeter guy who doesn't stray too much. So could you put him on Wiggins? And
not when he's at this level.
Right.
Maybe if he's healthy, Robb, yes.
Exactly. So I think you almost have to stash him on someone in it. And I don't love the idea of Draymond, who's just so cerebral and can make those plays. Let Draymond and Al cancel each other out with their basketball IQ type things, and let Robb just try to be, do what he can without having to worry too much about an offensive player.
And the other sneaky part of the series now is the Warriors are getting back some firepower, supposedly, with Iguodala, Otto Porter Jr., and then even Gary Payton II, who went out for broken elbow, is supposedly going to be back at some point in the finals, which is, I think, a huge boost for the bench, right? I don't know. Yeah, that's an incredible recovery after a few weeks, given how
who needs elbows,
right? he went to the school of Rondo from the 2011 playoffs.
Bend it right back into place.
But yeah, that's they become a lot more scary if they get full like that, in terms of just the versatility they have.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that scares me is just they've been there. And not that I think the Celtics are going to show up and be overwhelmed by the moment, but there's still a process usually for teams that make the finals where it's you got to get your feet wet and then you kind of get it. And it doesn't mean that teams can't win on their first trip there. It's certainly been instances of that. But especially when you're going up against a team that just knows what it's like and knows the sort of the wave of the series. And even though the Warriors are different than what they were from those first trips, I still worry that, especially early on, as the Celtics kind of find their way, that they're probably going to be playing from behind in the series at some point. And, how do they respond to that? And does that take some pressure off of Golden State? As good as the Celtics have been against that team, they're still going to be really tested in this series. And I'm fascinated to see what happens because I get what you're saying too. Every time they've had to just sort of either go up or tweak or be ready, and Ime's had them ready. So let's see if they can do it again.
Yeah, the Ime Udoka game plan in full effect. Hey guys, we can't lose 2 games in a row. We don't lose 2 games in a row. We're probably not gonna lose the series.
It'd be also be a good game plan. Winning games at home.
Yeah, that could help.
Just get wild and.
What are they now? What are they in the last 2 series now? Are they below 500 at home?
So if I'm doing my math right, I know they have 7 road wins. So that would mean they have 5 home wins. 12, 3.
So they went
5 and they had 2-0 in the first round. I can't do math quickly, but
so it's 2-2 in the Bucks series. 2-2 in the So they were 3-4, I think, in the last 2 rounds. They only won 1 game at home against the Heat, and then they won 2-2 against the Bucks at home. So they've been below 500 for the last 2 rounds at home,
which is just wild. The same deal. If you'd asked me coming into the series, what will the Celtics thrive at? I'd be like, this is why you play for home court advantage, because you're unbeatable at the Garden, and yet some of their best efforts have been on the road, where Ime has legitimately turned them into road warriors.
Well, and now he gets to do it with 6-hour cross-country flights on top of it.
It's not bad for the start. I'm bracing myself for the flight tomorrow, because it's just been forever since I traveled. 6 hours in an airplane and 3 hours to Miami felt interminable at times. But it's when you get the games 5, 6, 7, and we have to go ping, ping, ping. So actively rooting for a sweep on one side or the other.
You heard it here first.
Everyone's going to say the same. So what is your prediction for the series? Your early prediction for the series?
Celtics in 4, please. my early prediction for the series will be Celtics in 6. Just to spare us the
but you're following the trap again. You're saying,
but I'm following the trap. But I think they learned the trap is.
Yeah, I don't know if they've learned.
You don't think they learned? You think it's going 7? That's fair. I think 7 would be that certainly be fitting.
It would be fitting for them to win Game 7 on the road, 3rd straight series to go to 7. Like, just for me, it almost has to play out like that. It just feels like the Derek White line. What I love best. So Derek White comes out after Game 6 and says, "If it was easy, it wouldn't be us," right? And he missed the first 4 months of this like calamity, and even he knows that this thing is wild. So I love that he's like, yeah, man, like we don't make anything easy on ourselves, and it's so true. So I hope they've learned that you can ease the path to success. I do not know if that will actually translate in these games, but just feels like it's got to go 7, and the Celtics got to win on the road, and they somehow feel good, and everyone changes the Chase Arena owners to the Boston Celtics, and like they used to do with Oracle. But yeah, I'm fascinated to see how it plays out. That's fun. Hey, every time I've said, oh, you know what, that was a fun ride. This ride just keeps going.
The ride's going, and the ride is back in the finals for the first time since 2010 for the Celtics. Chris Forsberg, NBC Sports Boston, Celtics Talk podcast.
If you were happy enough to watch on the YouTube version, you would have seen this beautiful crane in my hotel room. I tried to give you a nice Miami background, and it's too sunny out right now. We had like a hurricane rip through this morning. I swear to God, it was like it canceled my flight. But now it's beautiful out, so go figure.
All right. Well, you enjoy the 90 degrees before flying out west. Make an offer on that, mural behind you before your way out. Make him put that.
That's a good point.
Send that home.
I should have just booked a fake flight today.